Happy New Year, everyone. Happy 2026. Hope you had a great holiday. And for 2026, I'm starting off by dipping into the backlog and playing Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Now, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is a game that returns to its 8-bit roots, both in terms of gameplay and presentation, and they knocked it out of the park. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is definitely a trip down the nostalgia for people who have played the original games on the 8-bit hardware, and everything that you'd come to expect from a Ninja Gaiden game in that era is here. You're talking about a simple storyline, tough, precise gameplay, great art style, and basically a whole lot of fun and yet frustration at the same time. So let's get into it. Kicking things off with the game's story, for a franchise first, to my understanding, you are not playing Ryu Hayabusa. You are playing his apprentice Kenji, as Ryu is off doing another thing. So you, as his apprentice Kenji, will team up with the CIA in an attempt to stop a demon invasion. That is basically the gist of the storyline. You will have some help from another clan, but aside from this, that is the gist of what this game's story is. It's there. It's nothing special. Felt like it's made in the 80s. It's just there, much like Shinobi Art of Vengeance. It serves its purpose of why you're playing the game and the story of the game, but it's nothing special. Moving on to the presentation. As stated, the game is 8-bit in roots, so the visuals, the audio design, the musical score, everything falls in line with it. And if you're a fan of that or you come from that era of gaming, this is 100% on point. It was fantastic. I loved every aspect of the game's presentation. So for anyone who's looking for that nostalgia trip, you definitely have that here. As you progress through the game, let's talk about the game's gameplay. First and foremost, the gameplay is tight and intuitive when it comes to controls, which is mandatory for a game that is challenging. So in terms of the gameplay itself, the combat is very simple. You have one major attack plus a secondary attack, and then it selects skills that you can equip. Now, when it comes to the combat, the one thing I will say regards to the combat, this is not Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Shinobi's combat was significantly much better than this game because they basically made it combos where you can chain combos together for crazy chains. You can't do that here. Every basic enemy dies to one hit of your sword, and that's it. Then you have other groups of enemies that require a few other hits to kill, but if you do kill an enemy that has an aura attached to him, you will then attain that aura, and then you can one-shot that stronger enemy. The game will precisely put enemies in certain places so that you can, the whole point of is to kill an enemy that's powered up, so then you can kill the stronger enemy in one blow. That's generally how it is. One of the other things with regards to the gameplay is how platforming works. Kenji does not have a double jump in this game. Instead, he has an aerial slash that if he hits an enemy or a projectile in the air, you will bounce off of them, and it acts like a pseudo double jump. And that's essentially the skills that he has. Before you start each stage, you do have the option to purchase your upgrades, which are different talismans that give you basically a different kunai, for example, a different super ability. It's all rudimentary, nothing special here, but it is like small upgrades. Again, this is based on nostalgia, so it does fall behind other games such as Shinobi, which I felt had far more depth in these areas, but it's still fun and enjoying nonetheless. With regards to bosses, now the bosses in this game, much like Shinobi's, they have great designed bosses in terms of artistically and how they're designed. I do feel that generally speaking, the mechanics of the bosses are better in Ninja Gaiden than Shinobi because they actually accentuate all of the mechanics within the game, where in Shinobi's boss fights, they didn't maximize the mechanics that were at play against those bosses. But that being said, while I do feel overall the boss battles in Ninja Gaiden were better than Shinobi's, There were a few that were, well, incredibly easy simply because of his aerial slash. Essentially, there was one boss where you're fighting a tanker and you're basically, the easiest way to kill this thing is you're just bouncing off the same turret repeatedly using your aerial slash until that turret dies, and then you move on to the next one. And because this also works with projectiles as well, you can literally never touch the ground and never get hit if you know how to do it and time it properly. So overall, while I do think the bosses are good overall, there was a few that stood out where I'm like, okay, this is incredibly rudimentary and basic, despite the mechanics that the game has on display for you. Aside from this, one of the other things I want to talk about, and it is a negative, but it's not, depending on who you are and what you decide to do. Essentially, because this is a Ninja Gaiden, the game is inherently very, very difficult, especially on the latter stages. There's no doubt about it. However, the game does have accessibility options. One of those options actually allows you to make your character immortal. You could basically turn God mode on and beat the game without ever taking a hit or dying once, simply because you have this feature turned on. Now, I personally wouldn't turn that on, as that ruins the fun of the game. I prefer my games to at least challenge me to some degree, but the fact that it's there for those, for whatever reason, if you want to just cruise and enjoy the game, you can make yourself turn into a god if you want to. So it is a hit or miss depending on how you look at things, but on the default settings, yeah, this game is definitely challenging, especially on the latter portion of the game. I'm not going to lie, towards the last maybe 2 or 3 stages, I did dial the damage down from 100% to 75 just because of how much shit comes your way, and my old ass just couldn't keep up. That's simple. That's how I'm being honest. But overall, I really enjoyed Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. I highly recommend it for Ninja Gaiden fans, and I recommend it for people who want to trip down memory lane or down the nostalgia of 8-bit gaming. I do think it is, in general, a step down from Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I do think Shinobi is a better game in general, but Ninja Gaiden shouldn't be missed all the while. I'm giving Ninja Gaiden Ragebound an 8 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.